A massive American vessel, long thought lost to history along with its cargo of wartime fuel and supplies, has finally been found. Decades ago, in the dead of night, torpedoes tore through its deck, sending fire and steel into the sea. Yet despite explosions and the relentless passage of time, the ship lies nearly intact on the ocean floor. Now, modern sonar and underwater drones have pierced the darkness, revealing a ghostly silhouette frozen in time, ready to tell its story. Inferno on the Atlantic. In 1929, the wreck of the SSEM Clark, a 10,000-ton American oil tanker, was identified on the seafloor off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Her rediscovery closed a 74-year mystery that began in the opening months of America's war in the Atlantic. In early 1942, after Pearl Harbor, German U-boats moved to the U.S. East Coast under Operation Paukenschlag. Coastal cities kept their lights on, outlining ships against the shoreline, while the U.S. Navy lacked an effective convoy system. The result was a devastating hunting ground sailors later called the U-boats Happy Time. Built in 1941, the EM Clark was a modern, turbine-powered tanker carrying crude oil from Texas to northeastern refineries, cargo essential to the Allied war effort. On the night of March 10, 1942, she steamed north unescorted, loaded with more than 100,000 barrels of oil, roughly 50 miles off Oregon Inlet. Under the command of Captain John S. Andrews, a First World War veteran, the tanker sailed with 40 merchant mariners and 8 naval armed guards at their guns. The crew was alert, yet unaware they had entered Torpedo Junction and that a predator had been tracking them for hours. Shortly after 1:15 a.m. on March 11th, the German submarine U-124, commanded by Johann Mohr, fired a single torpedo. It struck the tanker amidships on the starboard side. The explosion ignited the cargo, engulfing the vessel in flames within moments. The intense heat made the metal decks too hot to stand on, rendering several lifeboats unusable, and the crew had only minutes to escape. Even so, the crew managed to launch lifeboats and rafts from the port side. As they pulled away from the inferno, a second internal explosion tore through the ship, marking the tanker's final collapse. Miraculously, all 48 men were later rescued by the merchant ship Malay. The EM Clark, however, sank beneath the Atlantic, her exact location forgotten. For decades, the wreck lay at 270 feet, known only as an obstruction snagging fishing nets. In 2016, a private survey team led by sonar expert Steve Rodacher aboard the Atlantic Surveyor detected a large upright vessel while searching for another wreck. Sonar imagery revealed a tanker with a single torpedo strike on its starboard side. Not knowing the identity of the vessel they had discovered, researchers cross-referenced all known tanker losses in the area, narrowing the possibilities to a small number of candidates. Further analysis provided the decisive clue: the wreck's unique propulsion system, which ultimately confirmed its identity. Unlike most tankers of the era, the wreck featured a steam turbine and a single large propeller shaft, an exact match to the EM Clark. In 1919, NOAA officially confirmed the identification, adding her to the graveyard of the Atlantic National Marine Sanctuary. The wreck remains remarkably intact. Her bow is undamaged, anchor chains still in place, while the gun tubs on the stern, where armed guards once manned 3-inch and 50 caliber weapons, remain standing. Most striking of all, the lifeboat davits are still swung outward, frozen in the exact moment of evacuation. Preserved by cold, low-oxygen waters and an undisturbed seabed, the ship rests almost exactly as she was left in 1942. But while some wrecks are left untouched, others follow a far stranger path, seized, renamed, and forced to sail again under foreign flags, before vanishing for good. The Ghost Ship of the Pacific. In the summer of 2024, a sonar image emerged from the depths of Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary off the coast of Northern California. Resting 3,500 feet below the surface was a remarkably intact warship, its long, narrow hull frozen in time. After nearly 8 decades of uncertainty, the final resting place of the USS Stewart had been found. Few vessels in naval history carried a stranger legacy, or earned a more fitting name than this one, the Ghost Ship of the Pacific. Commissioned in 1920, the Stewart was a Clemson-class destroyer, fast, lightly built, and designed for a world that no longer existed by the time the Second World War began. For nearly 20 years, it served quietly with the U.S. Asiatic Fleet, patrolling the Philippines and the Chinese coast. Its mission was presence, not combat. That changed abruptly in December 1941, when the attack on Pearl Harbor transformed outdated patrol ships into frontline defenders against a modern Japanese navy. By early 1942, American and Allied forces in the Dutch East Indies were fighting a desperate holding action. The Stuart, along with other aging destroyers, was thrown into combat, and it was ill-equipped to survive. Its defining moment came in February during the Battle of Badung Strait, a chaotic night engagement against Japanese destroyers. The Stuart took heavy fire. A shell flooded its steering engine room, crippling the ship and forcing it to limp into the port of Surabaya, Java, for emergency repairs. There, an accident sealed its fate. While in a floating dry dock, the destroyer became trapped by improperly positioned keel blocks. As Japanese forces closed in on the port, the immobile ship became a liability. With no time and no means to free it, U.S. commanders made a brutal decision. Explosive charges were set, and the Stuart was scuttled to prevent its capture. To the U.S. Navy, it was another loss in a rapidly collapsing campaign. But the story did not end on the harbor floor. After capturing Surabaya, Japanese naval engineers examined the wreck and saw an opportunity. In a remarkable feat of salvage, they raised the sunken destroyer, repaired its battle damage, and refitted it for their own use. Its silhouette was altered, its weapons modified, and in 1943, the former USS Stuart was recommissioned into the Imperial Japanese Navy as Patrol Boat No. 102. Soon, Allied pilots began reporting something deeply unsettling: an American-designed four-stack destroyer escorting Japanese convoys behind enemy lines. With no record of such a ship being transferred, these sightings became a persistent puzzle, and the mystery of the ghost ship of the Pacific was born. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the ghost finally revealed itself. American occupation forces discovered the vessel laid up in Hiro Bay near Kure. In October, the ship was formally returned to U.S. control. Its original name had already been reassigned, so it was recommissioned simply as DD-224. The sailors tasked with bringing it home, however, bestowed upon it a deeply personal nickname, RAM-P-224. RAM-P stood for Recovered Allied Military Personnel, a term used for liberated prisoners of war. The men saw the ship not as a mere piece of hardware, but as a fellow prisoner that had finally returned. Towed across the Pacific, the Stuart reached San Francisco in early 1946. Its final service came a few months later. On May 24th, the Navy used the ship as a target in a live fire exercise. For over 2 hours, it absorbed rockets, aerial strafing, and naval gunfire before finally sinking. No precise coordinates were recorded. Once again, the ghost ship vanished. For 78 years, its resting place remained unknown. The modern search began when historian Russ Matthews, president of the Airsea Heritage Foundation, uncovered previously classified 1946 towing logs at the National Archives, narrowing the probable sinking area to Cordell Bank. In August 2024, Ocean Infinity deployed 3 Hugin 6000 autonomous underwater vehicles, equipped with high-resolution synthetic aperture sonar. Within hours, the drones scanned 37 square nautical miles of seabed and located the wreck. The data returned was conclusive and breathtaking. Preliminary scans revealed the Stuart to be largely intact, with its sleek, 314-foot-long hull resting nearly upright on the seabed. Maritime archaeologists noted that this level of preservation is exceptional for a vessel of its age, potentially making it one of the best-preserved examples of a World War I-era four-stacker destroyer. Following the sonar discovery, the team deployed a remotely operated vehicle equipped with a camera. Live video was fed back to historians and naval experts on shore, providing the first visual confirmation in 8 decades and allowing real-time analysis of the wreck and the damage from its final bombardment. The high-resolution sonar and video data now enrich both naval history and NOAA's ongoing research within the marine sanctuary. After nearly 8 decades, the ghost ship of the Pacific had finally been found. Yet some vessels do more than vanish and return. They cross enemy lines, change flags, and outlive the wars that created them, raising a haunting question: how many other ghosts are still waiting to be discovered? The lost bow of USS New Orleans. More than 2,000 feet beneath the waters of Iron Bottom Sound, the severed bow of the USS New Orleans has finally been found. For over 80 years, this 200-foot section of steel lay hidden on the seafloor, separated from the ship it nearly destroyed and tied to one of the most extraordinary survival stories in U.S. naval history. Commissioned in 1934, the USS New Orleans was the lead ship of her class, part of the last generation of American heavy cruisers built under the restrictive Washington Naval Treaty. To remain within strict weight limits, these so-called treaty cruisers carried powerful guns but sacrificed armor, a compromise that made them formidable and dangerously vulnerable. From the start of the Pacific War, the New Orleans was almost constantly in combat. She was present during the attack on Pearl Harbor and went on to fight in nearly every major campaign that followed, including Coral Sea, Midway, and the brutal struggle for the Solomon Islands. By the end of the war, she would earn 17 battle stars, a measure of how often she was sent into harm's way. Her defining moment came on the night of November 30th, 1942, during the Battle of Tassafaronga off Guadalcanal. In a chaotic close-range engagement, Japanese destroyers launched salvos of Type 93 long-lance torpedoes, among the most powerful naval weapons of the war. One struck the New Orleans on the port side, just forward of her No. 2 turret. The impact detonated the ship's forward magazines, where hundreds of shells and bags of black powder were stored, triggering a catastrophic explosion. The resulting explosion was, in the words of retired Rear Admiral Samuel J. Cox, probably the most devastating surface torpedo attack in history. In an instant, the bow, the bridge, 2 gun turrets, and more than 180 sailors were torn from the cruiser and hurled into the sea. In that moment, the 588-foot-long cruiser was reduced to a 388-foot stump, her bow a jagged, burning mess open to the ocean. Seawater rushed into the breached hull, and toxic fumes from the explosion filled the air. By all logic and naval precedent, the New Orleans should have followed her bow to the bottom of what sailors aptly named Iron Bottom Sound. Yet she did not sink. Inside the wrecked hull, the ship's damage control officer, Lieutenant Commander Hubert M. Hayter, along with Lieutenants Richard A. Haynes and Andrew L. Foreman, remained at their posts in the flooding, fume-filled interior, fighting to seal watertight compartments and stabilize the wreck. They succeeded in saving their ship, but tragically, not themselves. All 3 men succumbed to asphyxiation and were posthumously awarded the Navy Cross. With the bow gone and the forward section sealed, the New Orleans, listing and crippled, managed to limp under her own power to the relative safety of Tulagi Harbor. There, the crew faced the monumental task of making the ship seaworthy enough for a long voyage to a proper repair yard. Lacking steel and proper shipbuilding materials, they turned to the resources at hand, the coconut palms lining the island's shores. In a mere 11 days, Navy construction battalions fashioned a crude but functional false bow from coconut logs, canvas, and concrete, giving the ship a blunt, rounded front that kept the sea out. The repair was so makeshift that the ship could only sail in reverse to prevent the temporary bow from being torn off by water pressure. Thus, the USS New Orleans began one of the most improbable journeys of the war, sailing backwards, stern first, for over 1,000 miles across the open Pacific to reach Sydney, Australia, for initial repairs, before ultimately returning to the United States. Refitted with a new bow, she returned to battle, fighting through to the Philippines and Okinawa. Admiral Cox has noted that the New Orleans became the most grievously damaged U.S. cruiser to survive World War II. While the ship sailed on, her original bow lay lost on the seafloor, its exact location a mystery for 8 decades. The breakthrough came in 2025 during the Ocean Exploration Trust's Maritime Archaeology of Guadalcanal expedition, led by famed explorer Dr. Robert Ballard and supported by NOAA. The team employed a layered, high-tech search strategy. First, an uncrewed surface vessel called DryX, operated by the University of New Hampshire, performed wide-area seafloor mapping. Its sonar detected an unusual, ship-like anomaly that was too small to be a full vessel. Following this lead, the team deployed the remotely operated vehicle Hercules from the EV Nautilus to dive nearly 2,214 feet for a visual inspection. As the vehicle's lights cut through the darkness, the unmistakable shape of a cruiser's bow emerged. Archaeologists identified distinctive anchor fittings that matched archival photographs. Faint remnants of the hull number, CA-32, were visible near a massive tear in the plating, along with markings reading Navy Yard. The evidence was conclusive. The lost bow of the USS New Orleans had been found. However, war leaves more than wrecks on the ocean floor. Some remain unstable, feared not for what they were, but for what they still hold. Explosive Secrets of SS Richard Montgomery. In 1944, the SS Richard Montgomery, an American Liberty ship, sank off the southeast coast of England, leaving behind 3 rusting masts as a permanent reminder of a 1,000-ton threat lurking beneath the waves. Over 80 years later, it remains the most dangerous and controversial wreck in British waters. The Montgomery was born of wartime urgency. Launched in 1943 from Jacksonville, Florida, she was one of more than 2,700 Liberty ships mass-produced to replace losses inflicted by German U-boats. Designed to be expendable, these vessels used thin, welded steel plates that were quick to assemble but prone to cracking under stress. In August 1944, after the Normandy beaches were secured, the Montgomery was loaded with 6,127 tons of munitions in Philadelphia, over 35,000 items, including 2,000-pound bombs, 1,000-pounders, and crates of deadly cluster munitions, bound for Cherbourg, France, to support the Allied advance. Disaster struck on August 20th while awaiting convoy formation at the Great Nore anchorage off Sheerness. Ordered to anchor in shallow water, the ship's deep draft left her vulnerable. When a force 8 gale blew in, her anchor dragged, grounding the overloaded hull on a sandbank. As the tide ebbed, the welded plates buckled under the immense weight of her cargo. A frantic month-long salvage effort removed the aft holds, but the forward section remained flooded and fractured. On September 25th, the operation was abandoned. The ship's bow broke her back, entombing roughly 1,400 tons of high explosives in the forward holds. Since then, the wreck has been carefully monitored. In 1973, it became the first vessel designated dangerous under the Protection of Wrecks Act. An 875-yard exclusion zone is enforced by Medway ports, with buoys, radar surveillance, and regular high-resolution sonar surveys conducted by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. Official reports, most recently in June 2025, insist the risk of a major explosion is low if the wreck remains undisturbed. Yet surveys reveal a constant threat. A 2023 report noted the forward section had leaned 10 to 15 centimeters, with deck plating near a critical hold beginning to collapse. The dilemma is apparent. Any attempt to move or dismantle the wreck could trigger catastrophe. Historical precedent reinforces this fear. In 1967, the Polish munitions ship SS Kielce sank off Folkestone. When a salvage operation began, the ship detonated, creating a 20-foot deep crater, shattering nearby windows, and releasing the force equivalent to a 4.5 magnitude earthquake. The do-nothing approach has prevailed, though not without controversy. A 2019 House of Lords debate highlighted discrepancies in the explosive tally, with some estimates suggesting over 3,100 tons may remain. White phosphorus occasionally ignites spontaneously, and near misses with commercial vessels, 22 recorded by 1978, show the ongoing danger, particularly around Sheerness and the Isle of Grain, home to massive liquefied natural gas facilities. The potential consequences of a full-scale detonation are staggering. A 1970 study by the Royal Military College of Science predicted a blast could hurl water and debris 3 kilometers into the air and generate a 5-meter-high tsunami, overwhelming Sheerness and carrying burning phosphorus to nearby petrochemical installations. Partial explosions or scattered munitions could still cause devastating local effects. Proposals have ranged from encasing the wreck in concrete to a robotic billion-dollar removal of the munitions, but all have been deemed too risky or costly. In May 2025, authorities imposed a no-fly zone below 13,500 feet over the wreck, tightening controls in response to ongoing risk assessments. But unlike the Montgomery's looming danger, this next schooner's secrets waited patiently, hidden in plain sight, until modern ingenuity finally brought them to light. The F.J. King discovery. In September 2025, the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association announced the discovery of the long-lost American cargo schooner F.J. King, solving a 135-year-old mystery in the depths of Lake Michigan near Wisconsin's Door Peninsula. Built in 1867 in Toledo, Ohio by shipwright George R. Rogers, the 144-foot wooden schooner was designed for the Great Lakes bulk cargo trade. With a beam of 26 feet and a tonnage of 280, she could navigate the Welland Canal, connecting Lake Erie to Lake Ontario in the wider Great Lakes. For nearly 2 decades, she carried grain and iron ore, evolving from a 2-masted to a 3-masted vessel to increase cargo capacity. By 1886, under Captain William Griffin and co-owner J.S. Dunham, the F.J. King was a seasoned, if aging, workhorse of the Lake Fleet. Her final voyage began in mid-September 1886. Laden with iron ore from Escanaba, Michigan, she sailed toward Chicago along the Wisconsin coast when a violent southeast gale struck off the Door Peninsula. Waves of 8 to 10 feet battered the older wooden hull, forcing water into the hold. Despite hours of pumping, the crew could not stop the flooding. Recognizing the inevitable, Captain Griffin ordered abandonment. The 8-man crew launched the ship's yawl boat and watched as the schooner sank bow first around 2 a.m. on September 15th. As she went down, the stern deckhouse exploded, sending debris and the captain's papers into the air. The crew was rescued by the passing schooner La Petite, with no loss of life. The F.J. King quickly became a ghost ship. Lighthouse keeper William Sanderson reported seeing her masts protruding near shore, prompting the U.S. revenue cutter Andrew Johnson to cut them down to clear navigation hazards. Later searches, however, failed to locate the wreck. Over the next century, occasional snagging of fishing nets fueled its legend. In the 1970s, a $1,000 reward was offered for its discovery, to no avail. The mystery persisted because of conflicting historical accounts. Captain Griffin's storm time estimate placed the wreck 5 miles offshore in 150 feet of water, while Sanderson's lighthouse observation suggested it lay much closer to shore. Generations of searches relied on the captain's coordinates, consistently coming up empty. The breakthrough came from maritime historian Brendan Baylod, president of the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association. After reviewing historical records, he reasoned that Griffin, disoriented in the darkness, could have misjudged the ship's position, whereas Sanderson, standing on solid ground in daylight, likely reported accurate coordinates. This insight shifted the search closer to the Cana Island shoreline. Guided by Baylod's research, he and his partner, Bob Jack, launched an expedition on June 26, 2025, aboard the tour vessel Shoreline, inviting citizen scientists to participate. Their primary tool was the Deep Vision high-resolution side-scan sonar. Within 2 hours, and on only the second pass over the 2-square-mile grid, the sonar revealed a ship-shaped object. Measurements confirmed it was 144 feet long, a near-perfect match for the F.J. King. To verify the find, remotely operated vehicles were deployed, providing the first eyes on the schooner in 140 years. Remarkably, the vessel was largely intact, resting upright in 137 feet of water. Her wooden hull, hatches, and deck were preserved. Damage to the stern aligned with historical reports of the deckhouse explosion, and the bow bore marks from the impact with the lakebed. Heavy incrustation by invasive quagga mussels was evident but did not obscure the ship's structure. The mystery of the Western Reserve. In the summer of 2024, a team from the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society located the wreck of the SS Western Reserve, one of the first all-steel bulk freighters on the Great Lakes. The Western Reserve was a symbol of late 19th century industrial pride and confidence. Launched in 1890 in Cleveland, Ohio, the 300-foot vessel was hailed as the Inland Greyhound for its speed and celebrated as one of the safest ships afloat due to its innovative steel hull. Owned by Captain Peter G. Minch, it was designed to dominate the iron ore trade. In late August 1892, Captain Minch embarked on what was meant to be a pleasant family cruise. He brought his wife, Anna, their 2 young children, 9-year-old Charlie and 6-year-old Florence, along with his sister-in-law and her young daughter, on a routine light voyage to Two Harbors, Minnesota, to pick up ore. Tragedy struck on the night of August 30th, 1892. After weathering initial storms in Whitefish Bay, the ship ventured into the open lake. Without warning, the celebrated steel hull fractured near Deer Park, Michigan. According to 24-year-old wheelsman Harry W. Stewart, the only survivor, a crack opened on the deck forward of the boiler house and rapidly widened. The Western Reserve broke in two and sank in less than 10 minutes. Of the 28 people aboard, including the entire Minch family, only Stewart and a handful of crew made it into a single lifeboat. After a harrowing night battling gale-force winds and waves, and being passed unseen by another steamer, the lifeboat capsized in the brutal surf just 1 mile from shore at Deer Park. Through sheer determination and expert swimming, Stewart alone managed to crawl onto the beach after a 2-hour struggle in the water. He then walked 10 miles through the wilderness to the Deer Park life-saving station to raise the alarm. For over a century, the precise fate and location of the Western Reserve remained a mystery, with Stewart's account of the ship breaking in two standing as the only evidence. The 2024 discovery by the GLSHS team, led by Marine Operations Director Daryl Ertel, definitively confirmed his testimony. The sonar imagery revealed the two distinct 150-foot sections of the hull. The key to the find was a methodical multi-year search grid of a vast area of lakebed, looking for an anomaly matching the ship's size. The team's eureka moment came when they identified the wreck's unique signature, a large, broken vessel with visible cargo hatches. Subsequent confirmation came from the remote-operated vehicle footage, which captured the sheared-off mast lying across the deck and the ship's distinctive port-side running light, still intact on the deep, preserved wreck. But why did this modern steel ship fail? Historians point to the infancy of steel shipbuilding in the 1890s. The two leading theories, both supported by the wreck's condition, are hogging, where a massive wave lifts a ship's center. At the same time, the ends are unsupported, causing the hull to snap, and the use of brittle, early-generation steel that could not withstand Lake Superior's violent, twisting forces. The tragedy was compounded just 8 weeks later when the Western Reserve's nearly identical sister ship, the W.H. Gilcher, also vanished with all hands on Lake Michigan during a storm, suggesting a catastrophic design or material flaw in these pioneering vessels. The Western Reserve disaster marked the tragic direct end of Captain Minch's family line aboard his own ship. His eldest son, Philip, who had stayed home due to illness, later recovered the ship's starboard running light from the shore. He wired it for electricity and kept it burning in the window of his home, which he named Starboard Light, for the rest of his life as a memorial. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.